Hello everyone, welcome to Time Chat. I'm your host, Dr. Ivan Khan. Today on Time Chat, we'll be exploring public service, community empowerment, and speaking with New York City Assemblyman Luis Sepulveda. For centuries, New York City has been the destination for immigrants from around the world. From early Dutch settlers to generations of Europeans many years later, New York City established itself as America's melting pot many years ago. In the past 50 years, New York City has welcomed immigrants from South Asia as well as Latin America. Two of these immigrant groups included Puerto Ricans and Bangladeshis, who today are one of the largest minority groups and the fastest growing immigrant group, respectively. Together, Puerto Rican New Yorkers and Bangladeshi New Yorkers live side by side in neighborhoods like Jackson Heights, Queens, parts of Brooklyn, and of course, the South Bronx, particularly in the Park Chester and Castle Hill sections. Today's guest on Time Chat is an experienced attorney, community organizer, and New York State's Assemblyman from the 87th District, which includes Park Chester, Castle Hill, and neighboring areas of the Bronx, Luis Sepulveda. Assemblyman, thank you so much for joining us on Time Chat.
Thank you for the invitation to be here.
So, congratulations on your recent re-election. How's life been for you since November?
Well, I mean, life for most assemblymen in the state has been rather chaotic, especially the last couple of weeks, with the fall of now former Speaker Sheldon Silver, and the ascension to the speakership of a Bronx assemblyman, born and bred and raised in the Bronx, and that's our friend Carl Heastie. And for us as a minority group, it's a source of pride to have one of our own ascend to the speakership. In the 250 plus, 260 plus years of the New York State Assembly, we've never had an African American or minority speaker, and now we have it for the first time.
This is pretty historic times.
Sure.
And you know the Bronx is one of New York City's melting pots. You've done a lot of work with the Bangladeshi community, and there's a huge community in the Bronx. What's it like being known as the one and only Luis Pai?
Well, I mean, it's a source of pride for me. I have a very close relationship with the Bangladeshi American community in my district. When I first decided to run, my first race was 2010. I didn't succeed in that race, but one of the first groups to openly endorse me and support me and help me was the Bangladeshi American community there. So I am very grateful to that community, and I continue to have relationships with individuals, and it's a wonderful part of my life now.
So, as a Bangladeshi New Yorker, I'm extremely honored to have you on our show here and get a chance to work with you in the Bronx. But you're not originally from the Bronx.
That's correct.
I was different parts of New York City?
I was born in the south side of Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Okay.
I lived in Queens for about 10 to 12 years, areas like Woodside, Jackson Heights, Bayside, Sunnyside. And when I was about 18 years old, then I went on to college in Long Island. So I know Queens very well.
Excellent.
And I still have friends and family here too.
Great, great. Queens is probably the borough that has the largest Bangladeshi population here.
Right.
And you mentioned going to college and law school at Hofstra University in Long Island.
That's correct.
What was your college and law school life like, Assemblyman?
Well, it was a great experience. Of course, I lived on campus. It was, being a Latino or Puerto Rican on a college campus, especially Long Island, was a little different. We didn't have a lot of support groups there, but it was a good experience. And when I graduated from Hofstra University, my degree is actually in a combination degree of physics, natural science, and biology, because my original intention was to go to medical school. But at some point I realized that I really didn't want to go. I was doing it more probably for family than myself. I was more interested in the law. So eventually, after about a year of finding myself, I decided to apply for law school, and I went to Hofstra University Law School.
So that's a pretty common phenomenon in our community. Personally speaking, I had a very similar upbringing where I had a lot of family pressure to go into life of medicine, and I was able to work through getting my degree at SUNY Downstate Medical School, and then I switched out. What was that like for you to switch from having the pressure of becoming a doctor and going the other route?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think you made the right decision based on what you're doing now in your life.
Thank
I
you.
think you're doing wonderful work. Your tutorial is doing wonderful work.
Thank you.
You know, there was some level of disappointment for some members of my family, my father in particular, because he always wanted to say my son the doctor. You know, it was a hard choice to make. You know, you go to college, you go and you get a natural science degree, and you know, take a lot of the physics and organic chemistry, and I'm sure as you remember the wonderful thing that is,
Yeah.
to then transition to something that was not related to that. But I think in the overall analysis, I made the right decision.
We're really happy you made that decision too.
Thank you.
So please tell us about your work in your district. What are the major focus areas for you and your team, and what projects have you done with Bangladeshi New Yorkers? That's what our viewers would really love to find out.
Well, I mean, let's talk about cultural things that we've done.
Sure.
Senator Diaz, who's also a very close friend to the Bangladeshi American community, and I, we created the first Bangladesh Day celebration in New York State.
Wow.
The senator does a proclamation honoring Independence Day in the Senate, and I do it in the Assembly. We've been doing it for 3 years. A year before I got elected, we did it in the Senate. I'm happy to also say that Senator Diaz and I, for the first time, had an imam open up the Senate proceedings in the history of New York. We have done much work, trying to improve the lives of the residents of our district with, you know, halal food, for example. We're working with the Hindu community, the system with some of the issues that are important to them. We're trying to work so that other religions get the children that practice other religions also get days off of school when it's necessary. We work with trying to improve the educational system in our districts, and that impacts not only the Bangladeshi community, but the entire community that we represent. Just recently, as you know, because you were gracious enough to co-sponsor a spelling bee that we do in the district, and the Summer Reading Challenge, something I do with the children to make sure that they continue reading after classes are over and they're in the summer. We work to make sure that we allocate a lot of money for the budget for the school. You know, there's a give and take with the governor's offices and the assembly. And last year, I'm proud to say that along with Mayor de Blasio, Senator Klein, and the assembly, we were able to get universal pre-K, the budget for universal pre-K that's going to improve the lives of children at 3 years old.
All right. I want to ask you a few more questions on the universal pre-K topic in just a minute.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you've done a lot of project work around education and universal pre-K.
Yeah.
You've also supported families being able to pay for the college application process and just making that a little easier for families. Why education? You have a lot of work you're doing with youth.
Well, unfortunately, in the Bronx, only about 67% of the kids are graduating from high school. And of that 67%, I think it's less than 4% go on to get a higher education degree.
Okay.
When you have those numbers compared to what you have for the rest of the city, where you have about 82% of kids that are graduating from high school and a much larger percentage going on to college, what you create and can continue to perpetuate is an education gap.
Okay.
So these kids that graduate from our neighborhoods in the Bronx are falling behind further and further. When you fall behind on the education gap, then you also fall behind on the economic strata. So the purchasing power of these kids fall behind. The ability of them to progress up the economic ladder is inhibited. And so if you want to improve an area, you can have all the economic development you can intend to have, but everything starts and begins with education.
That's right.
So, you know, I've always talked about the prongs attacks that I believe to get economic development. You know, you have to have affordable housing, you have to have a significant drop in crime, and first and foremost is you have to close the education gap that continues to widen for kids in the Bronx. And so that's why I am almost fanatical about making sure that I can get as many resources as I'm permitted as an assemblyman, so that our kids get a better opportunity to improve their lives and get on and go to college and get, you know, all kinds of professional degrees.
And our kids in the Bronx expand across many communities across the globe now.
That's correct.
We have Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Bangladeshis, Bangladeshi Muslims, Bangladeshi Hindus, you have Albanians.
That's correct.
What advice would you have for all of our families at home who are living in the Bronx and are going to school in the public education system there?
Sure. Well, I must say that if you look at the Bangladeshi Muslim community, the Bangladeshi Hindu community, what I've experienced is when we have competitions and when I go to high school and awards are given, generally speaking, where you have a large contingency of Bangladeshi children, they are winning the awards. They're getting into the specialized high schools. They are excelling at a better rate than some other ethnic groups. And what do I attribute that to? I believe is that in the Bangladesh community, the parents are more involved in the day-to-day educational system of their children.
That's right.
So everything begins with parental involvement. You can throw tons of money into the educational system. If you have parental involvement, that goes a long way to improving the way children do in school. And that's the case for all communities. Once you see the parental involvement, there are other ethnic groups, the Albanians, the Puerto Ricans, where parents want their kids to succeed. If their children are getting help from the parents, they're going to PTA meetings, they're following the budgets for the schools, they have relationships with the principals, with the teachers. You have those things, and you can see a direct correlation as to how the children are doing academically in their schools.
So I'm just going to reiterate for the parents at home: attending more PTA meetings, getting to know the principal, speaking to your teacher on a daily basis. I know you're a father.
Understanding budgets also.
Understanding budgets.
Right. Understanding how the governor put forth a budget now.
Okay.
And seeing what percentage of the budgets are going downstate, meaning New York City, as opposed to upstate. Seeing how these resources are being spent. You got to look at English as second language learners. You have to look at kids with disabilities. You have to look at the curriculum. One of the big things now that's going to impact and change education in the state of New York and throughout the country is Common Core. So it's important that parents understand that and the kids understand the curriculum. Again, I want to thank you through your program, the work that you're doing to help that.
Thank you.
So, all these things require parental involvement.
Sit tight. We're going to go to a short break. And for our viewers at home, we're speaking with New York State Assemblyman Luis Sepulveda. We'll be back right after these messages. We're back on Time Chat. Today, we're speaking with New York State Assemblyman Luis Sepulveda, or Louis Pai, like most of our community knows him as. So, Louis Pai, when we went off to commercial break, you were mentioning the Common Core. It's a new state standard that's been adopted by 40 plus states. But a few states, particularly the Republican states, have started to drop them in anticipation of next year's presidential elections.
Right.
What are your thoughts on folks changing their tune around the Common Core, and how do you personally feel about the Common Core?
Well, I think the implementation at the beginning was a little messy, but the state, the Board of Regents, and the teachers are now, I believe, better prepared to handle the Common Core. It's interesting that for reasons that I still don't understand, how Common Core has become a political hotbed in this country, especially in areas where you have Republican governors. But Common Core was a creation of legislators in Kentucky that were Republicans. It was a concept that was created by Republican leaders.
And why do we even move into Common Core? Why was it adopted in the first place?
Well, because they felt that there were children in other countries that have a Common Core type of curriculum are doing better than our kids.
That's right.
So they wanted some level of uniformity throughout the country. It was a great thing. As I said, there were Republican leaders, legislators in Kentucky and other people that came together. The kiss of death was when President Obama said, well, this is a good idea, and started adopting it and wanted to work with it. Once that happened, then it became a problem, especially amongst Republican-led states.
It's politics veering its head into education.
Terribly.
And it happens.
Absolutely. It's a terrible thing. But Common Core is going to be, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a good thing.
I hope so. I personally believe in Common Core, and I know it started after looking at the math curriculum of countries like Japan and Singapore that are leading the world, and I'm looking forward to the U.S. catching up.
Well, hopefully so am I.
Moving away from education just a little bit. Right now in New York City and in many parts of the country, there are issues between communities of color and police, whether it's racial profiling, over-policing, if you ask some community members. And at the same time, if you're working with the police force, you see how much they're putting on the line every day to keep us all safe.
Yes.
How do you manage working with the police force in the Bronx and the community and bringing them closer together in a unified New York City?
Oh, absolutely. It's very important that we do that. I have 2 major precincts and 1 smaller one that covers my district, the 48th precinct, which covers most of West Farms and a piece of Van Nest, and the 43rd precinct, which covers the big bulk of my district, Parkchester, Castle Hill, and a small piece of the 45th precinct. Now, these precincts have precinct councils that are made up of residents and members of the police department, the actual precincts. They work on creating a relationship with the community and the police force or the police department. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 very active commanding officers that care about their community and work to improve that relationship. They visit the local churches, the local civic areas. They work with me. I've had issues in some districts where I've helped put out fires, brush fires, where I can talk to the community about some perception, and vice versa. So you have to have community involvement and the police department, the precinct commanders. You have to have a strong working relationship so you don't have the mess that has happened the last few months.
Are there any other public servants or colleagues that have given as much effort to this as you have? I know many have, but any of you that stand out?
Well, a lot of what I do, I have a partner in government. A lot of what I do at that level is with Senator Diaz. We work closely on the community. I believe that the borough president has done good work in trying to help that. Certainly the mayor. I think the mayor cares a lot about making sure that the relationship between the police department and the citizenry is harmonious. So you have good people there that can make a difference.
Amazing. Yeah. So you've been an assemblyman from the Bronx for a few years now, and you're on. You've already have a term under your belt.
Yes.
At least.
And 13 pounds less.
And 13 pounds less. Amazing. It's good to see that correlation and that relationship. So, in your viewpoint, what would an ideal Bronx look like in 5 years?
Well, certainly the education gap would diminish to the point where it no longer exists. Certainly you will have enough affordable housing for people to remain in the Bronx. Those that have gotten education, have gotten higher degrees, professional degrees, would want to stay and can afford to stay living in the Bronx. And a level of economic development that has not been seen in a long time.
Any particular areas for that economic development? The Bronx is going through a lot of change, as folks may know. We have a lot of new communities moving in. There's a lot of gentrification happening where a lot of new communities are moving into the Bronx. And at the same time, while that's happening around our city, a lot of South Asian and Bangladeshi immigrants have been pushed out of housing in Queens to be in the Bronx, and we're suddenly new to the Bronx.
Well,
welcome.
How's that?
Yeah.
Welcome. I welcome
the
Bangladesh. Hey, listen, I welcome the Bangladesh community. I welcome any individual, not any particular ethnic group, any individual that wants to come and move into my district or in the Bronx, wants to develop the area, wants to help the economy, wants to raise a family, wants to educate their children. I think that in terms of affordability, the Bronx is the last frontier for the city of New York. So come while you can, because I believe that if you invest in the Bronx, you are going to do very well in the future. A lot of good things happening. Parkchester, we're going to get a Metro North train station. I think that'll be a super boom for the economy. Because now people that have businesses in the area can transport their stuff easily to Connecticut, or can work in Connecticut and come back to the city, or vice versa. So you open up a whole new world of economic development with Metro North, and certainly start investing around the area now, because I think it's going to be a solid investment.
So the rent, in other words, the rent is pretty much going to go up in the next 5 years. Well, and that's always a good sign.
It's a good sign if you have comparable, affordable housing, so that people who have been there for many years, our seniors, our retirees, don't leave.
Okay.
That you want them to stay there because you want them to bring their families there.
So, Assemblyman, we had a chance to hear a little bit about your vision for the Bronx in 5 years. What would the perfect New York City look like in 6 to 7 years?
We re-elect Mayor de Blasio. We have in the city of New York, especially in the Bronx, more technology-based companies coming into the area. People can afford to live in the city of New York. A significant drop in crime. Wherever you've seen, and I use Connecticut, some cities in Connecticut as a model, where you've had a significant drop of crime, you've seen a boom in economic development. So, work the education component so that you've narrowed that gap, and then work the economic development, work the significant drop in crime, and that'll bring up the level of economic development you're seeing some of it now. A new hotel is being built in the Bronx. You're seeing some of the trendy shops are coming to the Bronx. You see some of the malls like Bartow Plaza, the mall there. They just built a new Macy's there. In Parkchester, you just see a new Marshall and a couple of other chain stores and retail stores that people can shop in. With that comes jobs. With that comes more options. With that, the money stays locally. It doesn't go into Manhattan or other areas, or other cities, I should say. It should stay in New York City where it belongs.
So with a lot of, so it seems like increased education plus lower crime equals greater economic opportunity.
And affordable housing.
And affordable housing.
Those are the three components.
So, we mentioned how there's a new speaker.
Yes.
And over time, the Bronx will be looking more diverse. What can Bangladeshis do to become more engaged with your colleagues in the state Senate and the state Assembly, and even in New York City local government? What can the Bangladeshi community do to become more involved?
Well, one important thing is that people that are able to register to vote have to register to vote in larger numbers.
Okay.
You have to get involved in the political process. That's important. Look, for example, assembly seats. The turnout rate in assembly primaries is embarrassingly low. And we as leaders share some of that blame. I try to increase those numbers by doing voter registration drives. If you have a significant voting block that, let's say, for example, in my district, a voting block of about 500 or 600 Bangladeshi Americans, that is a solid voice that can change the outcome of an election. And I'm not sure if that message is coming across to the community as a whole. That one of the things that I said when I ran in 2010 was that at that point, the Bangladeshi community could have decided who was the next assemblyman in our district if the numbers were comparable to the voter registration numbers that we see. So everything begins with voter registration. Everything continues with participating in elections, actually coming out and vote. And one of the things that saddens me that I've seen in the Bangladeshi community is that a lot of the politics back home
is what's dominating our attention here.
Exactly. And so those issues that are in Bangladesh are brought here, and the opposition group, the leading group, there's so much internecine strife that they don't come together,
here.
These groups here, and become a political force. So that saddens me. That's been my experience in the last few years that I've been involved here.
I know countless Bangladeshi Americans who agree with you wholeheartedly and be there to support you in helping fix that.
Sure. But one thing that warms my heart is that now you're seeing younger Bangladeshi American children, 18 plus, who can vote, who don't have that issue with politics back in Bangladesh. It doesn't impact them here. And so they have a different way of thinking.
Awesome.
And you're starting to see groups emerging of these young men and women who have a different thought process about politics here in the Bronx.
Great.
I've often said that I hope that one day when I decide to leave the assembly, or if in the future, that the first Bangladeshi American assemblyman will come from the Bronx. And I really believe that.
All the Bronx area residents, you heard Assemblyman Sepulveda is looking out for you to join his old seat in the assembly one day. So you've had a chance to meet Luis Bhai, the public official, Luis Sepulveda, the assemblyman from the 87th District. How would your close friends describe you?
Fiercely loyal,
Mm-hmm.
fiercely independent, and sometimes fiercely stubborn.
Mm.
So I think those are the three qualities that most of my friends would tell you.
Loyal, stubborn, and
Fiercely independent.
independent.
That's correct. That's correct.
And tell us about your family.
My family. Well, I have a 23-year-old son from my first marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I've been married now for 4 years with my second wife.
Mhm.
I have a wonderful wife
Mm-hmm.
who has been very supportive of my endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a charming, handsome, intelligent 3-year-old child who I believe more people in the district know who he is than I am because of Facebook and all the social media. And he's always there next to me at political events or group events. So I have a wonderful family. My 23-year-old works, got his college degree. He works in community affairs for the city of New York.
Great.
And he's a handsome, wonderful son. And I love my family dearly. I couldn't be without them.
I'm sure you make them incredibly proud, just like you make all of us Bangladeshi New Yorkers proud. Where are some fun places you like to go with your family? Any particular restaurants? And of course,
sure.
what would your favorite Bangladeshi restaurants be at the end of that? Where do you normally go? And tell us about your Bangladeshi hotspots.
Well, I can tell you this. Jackson Heights has wonderful Bangladeshi restaurants. But for me, everything begins and ends with Nehru's in Starling Avenue and Bengal Restaurant on White Plains Road, both in my district. Nehru's is close to my law office.
Nirab?
Nerub. I'm sorry.
Nerub, perfect,
Nerub.
perfect.
It's close to my law office, so I go there, quite often. My 3-year-old, interestingly enough, loves Bangladeshi food.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Whenever he's getting finicky,
Uh-huh.
and we can't get him to eat the food that we cook, then I'll take a ride on over to the restaurant and get some Bengali food, and he will devour it.
What does Luisito love from our community's dishes? Because I'm sure you'll have a line of mothers with his favorite dish lined up in your office tomorrow.
He likes the samosas.
Samosas, okay.
That's correct. And he likes the chicken and rice food. He likes the spicy food.
Good.
So it's, we have already the owner of Nerub already knows when we step foot in the door what we want. And Bengal restaurant on White Plains Road.
White Plains Road.
A wonderful. I love the sweets that are made there. The service there is fantastic. The people there are really good. So we're fortunate.
Yeah.
Because my assembly office is near Bengal restaurant. My law office is near Nairobi. So I'm in heaven. Whenever I want Bengali food, that's where I go.
As you know, in the Bronx, Nirab Restaurant is my favorite restaurant in all of the Bronx, so we have to catch up for lunch there sometime.
Absolutely.
What final message do you have for our viewers at home, Luis Bhai?
Well, this is an interesting time now in government. You're reading about corruption. You're reading about the fall of certain elected officials. Yeah. But my message is that, you can't base the reputation of all elected officials about what you're reading. Being myself as an assemblyman, we work hard. It's a part-time job, but the reality is that we work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a sacrifice on family. Oh, yeah. Several days a week, I'm in Albany. My family's here.
That's right.
It's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice for a lot of our time and what we do. And I'd say that 95% of those that are serving in state government and city government are people that are working hard, that really want to improve the lives of the citizens in this community, in the city of New York, in the state of New York. And so, don't believe that we're all corrupt. We're all really hardworking people who care about what we're doing and care about our children and our community.
Best of luck on an amazing 2015 for you and your team. Thank you so much for joining us on Time Chat. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank you again for the wonderful work you're doing, helping our kids get into the specialized high schools and absorbing Common Core at a rate that you're not seeing otherwise.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we just had a chance to hear from the man himself, New York State Assemblyman Luis Sepulveda. As you all learned, public service is increasingly becoming a career destination for tomorrow's youth. Millennials, or those who grew up after the turn of the century, are more and more leaning towards professionals that are both financially secure and impactful for society. Similar to today's guest, Assemblyman Sepulveda, President Barack Obama's career was defined by his transitioning from a background in corporate law to a shift in community organizing, public service, and eventually the White House. In the next few months, we'll get to speak to numerous Bangladeshi professionals who've taken similar paths to fulfilling careers in their community. Speaking from my own experience, I graduated from medical school from the SUNY Downstate College of Medicine in 2007. After completing my residency match in physical medicine and rehabilitation/sports medicine, I stayed back at SUNY Downstate to complete my master's in public health, in management and policy, since I saw myself working with my community one day. Every day, I thank God for having the courage to make that decision almost 10 years ago. Next week, we'll be joined by a personal mentor and a community leader who has worked with thousands of youth and experts in their professional journey. It'll be my immense privilege to host my mother, Mrs. Naima Khan, Vice President at Constatorial. Thank you for joining us today on Time Chat. I'm your host, Dr. Yvonne Khan. I hope to see you next week, and until then, pay it forward.